So how do these three ideas, gift, responsibility, and invitation, these three ways that we relate to our calling, what are some ways that those can be kind of woven into or inform that disciple making pathway or that spiritual growth pathway?
Yeah, I think part of that, Steve, is to say what happens when we, embrace two of these things, but not the third. So, one of the ways we talk about that, and Derek talks about this. So, like, I just want to continue to make sure we give Derek credit on this. That if you see your calling as a gift and an invitation, but not a responsibility, then you probably are looking at your calling as a hobby.
Huh.
It's something that I can
Get
get.
around to it.
Yeah, when I have some extra time,
Hmm.
but it's not actually forcing its way into my life unless if I've got some extra time to be able to do it, then I enjoy doing it, but it's not actually intruding on my life in any kind of way. It's just a hobby, and so I play at it, but I don't actually work it into the way I do my entire life.
Yeah, that's good. And how about like if you lose the gift part of that and you have just the responsibility and invitation?
Burden.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it becomes a burden, right? I
Yeah,
mean, just think
right.
about that. If I no longer see it as a gift and it is only a responsibility and invitation, I carry it
Yeah,
as a burden of something not that I get to do,
yeah,
but it's something I have to do.
yeah,
And you just think about, we know even in this, a lot of people who are going to be listening to this or, read the
yeah.
around this will be, vocational ministry leaders. How many would say that over time their calling has started to feel like a burden on that? And so really wanting to make sure that we're always awakening the fact that this really is a gift. Like it actually generates the joy even in the pain,
right.
of that responsibility or in the pain of the invitation at times, that it always is refueling the joy of of the gift that it really is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with that, remember Jesus's words are, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light." And how many of us have read that and said, Jesus, you're a liar, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Not my
Don't do it.
experience,
Right,
Jesus.
right.
Right.
But what that could signify in our lives is that we've lost calling as a gift.
Mm,
Like when the burden becomes breaking
yeah.
to us, and when it becomes paralyzing to us, then maybe a good place to return to is, hey, I need to remember that calling is a gift. And maybe that's an invitation of Jesus to come rest with him and to relearn again about the gift of the calling that he's placed on us.
Yeah. That's good. And what about the invitation when the invitation is missing and you just have the gift
You were
responsibility?
naming it a moment ago.
Mm.
Is that it becomes self-serving?
Yeah.
Like
Got it.
we
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
realize that we're when we lose the sight that we're cooperating out of communion
Hmm.
with the master
Yeah.
who doesn't need us but is choosing to invite us into what he's doing.
Mm,
It suddenly can shift to be, I'm using my calling now for me
yeah.
rather than for the good of others and for the glory of God.
And the key indicator there, Steve, is when my calling doesn't lead to mission. And here's what I mean by that. Remember in our last episode, we talked about defining those terms.
Yeah.
Calling is what I do, mission is what we do.
Mm,
So if ever our calling becomes something that we are doing by ourselves, we probably have lost the responsibility that our calling functions in a bigger mission of what we are doing together. And that we is first, the local church, like the local church in the community. How is my calling, helping the church better accomplish its mission? Because every time my calling combines with Shane's calling or your calling, we need a greater mission than any one of our callings. And so what happens when calling gets detached from we and it's just
mhm.
I, then I use it as an excuse to do everything that I want to do. I love the way Will Willimon talks about, sometimes where we get to in Christianity, and he says, God basically becomes someone to give me everything I ever wanted before I met God. And I like,
Right.
times have I tried to use God to give me everything I ever wanted before I met God. The we nature of mission keeps me from abusing God in that way, because it's not just simply about God being a genie in a bottle that gives me everything I ever wanted before him, and calling then is my excuse to pursue that. No, if calling doesn't lead to we, if personal calling doesn't lead to we, then most likely it's gotten off track and it's become self-serving to me.